everyone, my name's Kaye Roberts-Palmer from Blue Bee Garden Design and Save Our Citrus, and Brimbank Libraries have invited me here today to talk to you all about planting bulbs. But just before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're virtually meeting on today and their elders past, present and emerging. Now this video is part of a series of autumn gardening videos that I'm doing. So next week I'm going to be talking about composting and what to do with all those autumn leaves that you've got at the moment. And the week after that we're getting right into worm farms. I'm going to be showing you my worm farms and what's happening there and how to set it up. So stay tuned each week. These will be up on the Brimbank Facebook page and you can watch them. And also after each video I'm going to be sticking around online and you can put your questions into the comments section and I'll answer it. So yeah, so stay tuned, there's going to be a lot more. But anyway, going back to bulbs. So I know it's hard to imagine spring at the moment as we're in autumn and going into winter, but spring bulbs are really good to put in now to get them set up and get them set up in the soil. But what are bulbs? Well, there's bulbs, there's corms, there's rhizomes, there's tubers, and they're all storage structures for the plant to survive the winter period. Now, a lot of the bulbs come from Europe, where obviously they get those really frosty, snowy winters, and it was a way for the plants to survive to spring. And what you do find with some of these bulbs, they flower in spring, they get all their reproduction done, they die back into the bulb, and then you have the deciduous trees come. Well, in Europe it was like the oaks and the beeches and that sort of thing. But if we go back to the structure, let's have a look a bit closer at the structure of some of these things. Okay, so this is a corm here. Slightly different from a bulb in that it has these cormels, the little kind of juvenile corms growing up there, and each generation the mother corm sort of dies off so that the new generation, the cormels, can start. It's also got a really good root system, but when it's dormant, that doesn't come up at first over winter, and then as spring happens, you see the root system form, but it's got all its energy stored in there. All right, so they're quite funny looking things. And gladioli, if you love your gladiolis, this is the structure that they come from. Another one that's really common is your rhizomes. Okay, so your rhizomes are your canna lilies, lilies in general. So the way they work is they have little nodes, and the stem is also, like I said, a storage unit, and this is all underground. And you can actually break them into segments, and each bit will grow a new plant. And that's why there's a lot of talk about dividing up your rhizomes so they don't get too massy or messy or that sort of thing. But they look very different, but they have the same effect of holding on to nutrients until spring, until the weather's better. So then if we look at bulbs, all right, so the way bulbs work is they store all their energy inside the bulb. They have a paper coating on the outside to protect them from the soil. They have what they call a basal stem, which is similar. If you look at your garlic underneath, it has a basal plate. It's where the roots will come out of. I mean, all this is to protect the really young little plant inside. So it's like a little capsule to keep it safe while the winter's coming, you know, really frosty, cold weather. It can survive quite nicely in there. But that's what the bulbs look like. Now, in those sort of medieval times when people were really hungry, they used to sometimes mistake daffodil bulbs for onion bulbs. Now you really don't want to do that, even though they look very similar, because onion bulbs are bulbs again, because daffodils are poisonous. All right, they make you very sick, so you want to make sure you're not putting your onions and your daffodils in the same area. But this is the part of the bulb. This is what it looks like inside. All right, so what's the life cycle of a bulb? Because unlike a lot of plants, like your perennials, you see them year in, year out, and they provide that lovely structure to your garden. But what spring bulbs give you is that real burst of colour. I mean, when you see your first daffodil of the season, you think, here's spring, it's coming. It's really joyous and uplifting to see it. So the way the life cycle of bulbs work, all right, so if we start with one, all right, so one, it's dormant. It's all stored in there, all the little plants stored in there. It's not really doing a lot. Then what happens now, so we're planting now, all right? So over the next, say, couple of months, it starts to just get these roots happening. So it's taking up nutrients from the soil. It's preparing itself for spring. Then pre-bloom is like, end of July, just when it can tell the temperature's changing. Plants are extremely sensitive to temperature. I mean, they are in the same place year after year, so they know when there's temperature fluctuations around, and this is pre-bloom. So as you can see, it's just getting the little plant coming up. And then, of course, our favourite time of the year, when it's blooming, and you get these with tulips and daffodils and all the other beautiful spring bulbs, you get that flush of colour. Now, what's really important is, while we love this stage with the flowers, we think, yay, it's really looking good, we have to leave it so that when the flowers died off, you still get the leaves. Now, the leaves can look unsightly, they can go yellow, straggly, that sort of thing, but it's really important that you hold back your secateurs and you don't chop off the leaves. The reason why is because, remembering that a bulb is a food storage capsule, it's actually taking all the nutrients and chlorophyll back into the bulb for the following season. So if you go through and you chop those off too soon, you're depriving your bulbs of energy, and then come next season, they might not be able to flower. All right, they might have enough energy to flower. So it's really important with the life cycle of a bulb that when it gets to the sort of messy stage, that you leave it. But this is how it works over the season. So this is winter, autumn, winter, late winter, spring, and then late spring, if you think of it that way. All right, so let's go and have a look. In a sec, we'll go and have a look at some plantings that I've done just to show you. But before you do, I just want to actually point out some wonderful spring bulbs that you can put in now. Okay, the first one, of course, we can't go past the daffodils. All right, the daffodils are originally from Southern Europe and North Africa. And of course, they look like this. All right, this is the Ice King. I bought this one, I haven't tried it before. It's got these double blooms. Can you see the beautiful yellow double blooms? Great for pots. Daffodils are great for pots. And they really are one of the most easiest flowers to grow. They're self-sufficient, they do their own thing. Daffodils are definitely a must, and that includes jonquils as well. Then we move on to the hyacinths, the grape hyacinths. Now, it's important you don't overwater the grape hyacinths, and they are quite tiny little bulbs. They look like this. And you also want to plant them in clumps, in groups. All of these spring bulbs you plant in clumps. They look the best. All right. Then we've got, one of my favorites, freesias. Freesias, if you haven't smelt the perfume of freesias, you're missing out. They are just gorgeous. Now their little bulbs are slightly different. Check that out. It's very long. Now it's important that you don't plant it the wrong way. You always plant it upwards. They love full sun. So I've planted them in a pot. I will show you in a minute. But I plant them en masse. You need to plant them en masse. And they're native to South Africa. So that's why they do so well in our climate. The next ones I've got are Spanish bells. All right, now Spanish bells, they have quite a larger bulb. See that? And there's not really much of a paper coating on them. They're quite fat and they do quite well. So again, they're good for shade as well. If you've got dappled sun, shade, they work really well. They can be pink, blue or white. Right. I know, I've still got more. I'm very, very excited about my bulbs. Okay, we got Sparaxis here. Look at the colours in those. Now these were little ones I've bought. So I've bought them in an online gardening store and they've actually already started sprouting. So really, if you're buying online, it's important to plant them as quickly as you can. So get yourself ready before you order your bulbs, because look at that. It's ready to go. All right, and the final one is Spring Star. This creates a little carpet of blue flowers, sort of like a bluebell. It comes from Argentina and Uruguay. It's a bit hard to show you because they're so tiny. And they look beautiful when they're sort of in full flush under trees, that sort of thing. So with your bulbs, it's important that you don't overwater them because you can, rot the little coating on them. All right, so make sure you don't overwater. So let's just go and have a look at some of the plantings that I've done in the garden. So here's my garden. I've got a few pots there, as you can see, that I can use for my spring bulbs. A beautiful blue one down the base. We're just passing the blue Nemorosa Salvia on the right. I've just recently purchased this lovely Valencia orange and bought that terracotta pot to go with it, and I wanted some colour at the base. So I've planted the spring bulbs down there, and the ones I showed you are what I've used. I'm going to cover those over with potting mix right up to the rim, and so I should get a lovely burst of different spring colour. I've grouped them together. I'm also considering putting another pot right next to terracotta where that little house is. I'm going to plant probably some daffodils there, but this is just to give you an idea of some of the plants that are on display right now in autumn. I've still got a few weedings to do, but it's looking really good in the garden at the moment. I'm quite pleased with it, as you can see. Okay, so this is my callistemon. Here I've got freesias planted. Now they've just come up by themselves. They're doing really well. I have to do some weeding here. I've got some volunteer broad beans happening, so I need to get those out. But as you can see, the freesias are existing really well and quite comfortable with being with the callistemon. So they'll come up in spring and then die back. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them come up. It's going to be great. All right, so I hope you enjoyed looking at the garden. Now, I wanted to talk about the kind of pots that you can use. So first up, we've got a standard sort of black plastic pot. There's nothing wrong with this. You can certainly use it. Make sure it's got nice drainage holes at the bottom. The only thing about black plastic pots is you don't want to put them in the full sun because they will tend to cook your bulbs. But if you're putting them, say, in the dappled shade, they will be fine. They certainly retain the water. The second kind of pots we've got are these more taller glazed type pots. Now I've decided I'm going to put some of my daffodils in here for this season because this blue with the yellow is going to look fantastic. But I won't be able to fit very many because it's quite a deep pot, but it's not very big in the top. So maybe 3 I'll put in there, and then I'll have the beautiful yellow coming up. It's also got good drainage, which is important. And you should make sure that you've got a plate or something just underneath, all right? So they all need to have free draining because otherwise your bulbs will rot. The other more chunky type bulbs, this is a glazed terracotta pot. It has got a tiny hole in there, but it will drain if I used good quality potting mix. So I'll make sure I won't scrimp on the potting mix. And in this, look, I think I'll put some freesias, some of my freesias, and then the following season I might pull some of them out and put them somewhere else. I find that with freesias, they multiply quite quickly and I don't have to do much with them. And then I've got a pot like this one. This is a self-contained pot. It's actually got a plate built in, which is really handy because I don't lose the plates then. And it's got a nice deep hole in the bottom of it too. So in this, I might try some of the hyacinths, I think, and some of the Spanish bells, the blues, because of the nice green together. Now you can put your bulbs straight into the ground. I've had daffodils at the front of the garden for years. I don't tend to dig them up in Melbourne. I find that we get a cold enough season that they survive. And I'm kind of like, I'm a bit of tough love kind of person, you know, they have to survive in this kind of climate. So I think, and the other thing is with the planting of the bulbs. So here's your daffodil bulb here. You want to plant it like twice the depth of the bulb, of the length of the bulb. So whatever the length of the bulb is, twice the length of the bulb. And that goes for all the, whatever size they are, you need to plant them that length, depth downwards, okay? So they're nice and secure in the soil. It's also good to make sure it's a loose soil so they can get their roots in fairly quickly. Now, once they're when they're flowering, you can feed them some Osmocote slow release fertilizer. But the most important thing you can do for your bulbs is make sure that you buy good quality potting mix, and that with your soil where you want to plant them, you add compost and manure and make it a really rich soil so they can take it into their bulbs. You want to make sure as well, like I said, to not overwater. So once they flowered, then just let them dry out a bit so they return to the bulbs. All right, so you're not going to have them rotting on you. So that's really important. Okay, so that's been a bit about planting bulbs. Don't forget, this is an autumn garden series of videos. Next week I'm going to be tackling composting and what to do with all your autumn leaves. And the week after that I'm going to be getting into worm farms. We're going to be looking at my worm farm. It's going to be really exciting. But thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to put your questions into the comments section below. I'll answer them. And thank you so much for watching. I've been Kaye Roberts-Palmer from Blue Bee Garden Design and Save Our Citrus. And stay safe and well during this period. Thank you. Bye.